Right, welcome back, guys. So in this one again, we are also going to be looking at another example of entries, and in this case, we are going to be taking confirmation entries and sort of showing you how it appears when you have a confirmation entry and a double confirmation entry. So remember again, like I always say, I cherry pick these examples because they are there to illustrate how it works. It doesn't mean it happens all the time. Doesn't mean it happens all the time, and I hope that is not the impression that I'm creating here to say this is how the market works. It always happens. Every time you get this, you get this. You just need to be a patient trader who's ready to wait for the market to present what you're looking for to you, right? The market is to present what you're looking for to you. Okay, so what we have here is a market that's obviously pushing downwards. We can see if we connect these 2 points, they're telling us that the market is moving downwards. Nature's theory tells us the market is moving downwards, and the market structure shows us the market is moving downwards. So obviously, I'm going to highlight some points where we see some breakout structures. Over here, with a breakout structure, breakout structure, breakout structure over there, a breakout structure over there. We've got a low point, price closes ever so slightly below. A week, we get a pullback, and price closes ever so slightly below, as you can see over here. Maybe actually doesn't. Right, yeah, it closes ever so slightly below where we've got on the line chart showing us it's a push down, pull up, push down like that. And these are the kind of moves we're following. But as we can see already that these kind of pull down pull ups are becoming smaller and smaller, showing us that there's volume that's getting squeezed in the market, and the ranges of the move are becoming lower and lower. Maybe what others would call a falling wedge. Not that we're trading the pattern, but we're listening to what the market is saying. It's showing us that there's a squeezing of volume over here, and perhaps the market is running out of the fuel to keeping for the base. It's running out of the fuel for the base. Right, so what do we have here? We've got our sort of bearish breakout structure over there, and we're waiting for the market to give us a selling opportunity, or at least to watch if we get a selling opportunity right at these highs over there. Right, now in this case, obviously, because I've pre-looked at the example, I know that we don't get the selling opportunity that we're looking for. Instead, what we get is a change of character. Right, we see price pushing up, and then we see this, which is a bullish change of character, right? And as you would appreciate, what you would then have in this case would have been, if you were the guy who had just worked on a risk entry over here, you took a loss, right? You took a loss, which is what we're saying when we're saying, you know, when you're a guy who trades risk entries and you are not careful with working on these, these penning orders everywhere in the market, then you are going to be in a position where you're going to get squeezed by the market and you're going to lose money. So you need to be able to identify your points of entry very, very well and to know what you're looking for, right? This is where the confirmation entry comes in, because obviously we can see we did not get any sort of confirmation over here, even in the lower time frames. It was just momentum that pushed up, gave you a change of character. And then now what you're looking for in this lower time frame is to see price coming back down into your POI and showing you that it's going to what? It's going to respect your POI. So over here, you've obviously got your last sell candle over here. You've got this other candle, which is sort of a pullback before price pushes higher, and another pullback before price pushes higher. All of them are more or less in the same place. And what I would do is sometimes I shift a time frame up to make sure I can see if any of them appear on the higher time frame. If any of the two were to appear here, I was going to pick the one that appeared on the higher time frame. But because both of them don't appear in this case, I'm going to pick this last POI as the last sell candle before the momentum to buy steps in. Right, now we've got a change of character. We've identified a POI. What are we waiting for? We're simply waiting for price to come back into this zone, give us our pattern, and then we are in for the long, right? So let's just go back to the 1 hour time frame and let's let price be price and let it move. All right, so let me just increase the speed a little bit, and then we're going to wait for the market to show us what it's trying to do. Right, so there we go. Already we can see that we have a change of character over here with the lows being broken and price moving downwards. And we don't want to confuse ourselves. We know what we're waiting for, so we're not going to be taking this move down, but we're going to just make sure our POI is within the discounted price, and yes, it is. So we're happy to take that POI, and then we let the market move again. So what we see over here is price taps into a POI, and there we go. Now you need to be watching this very, very closely. You need to be watching this very, very closely. So this is our H4 POI. Let's label it as the H4 POI, right? And then let's just go to the M15 for you to see why I paused over here. So obviously now we had this as one of the major points where we are seeing a bullish change of character. This is one of the last lower highs before we see the lowest low over here, and then price pushes up to break the high, right? And now we've got a change of character. So if we go to the 1 hour chart, this is what I was looking at. This is how I identified that change of character. So obviously I'm looking for price to come back into one of the POIs over here before it pushes up. Now if I go back to the 15-minute chart, just as an area from which I want to draw my zone, right? I want to look for POIs that are at least this low. Now at this point, obviously I don't know if price has already started the major retracement until it breaks this low. But if this is the zone, then I want to make sure that I've drawn it well. So I'm just going to wait for the market to show me what it's trying to do. If I just go back to the 1 hour chart, this is what I'll then do. So let me just push this H4 backwards, and then I'm going to mark out this H1 POI, include the low over here, and stretch it to the right. Okay. Now let's just watch what the market does. So already we've seen a change of character, and I'm waiting for the market to give me an opportunity to enter, right? So we didn't just work on a buy order at the top. We've seen price moving in, giving us a change of character. Now we're going to wait for price to come in, and then we're going to take our risk entry into this trade from a 1 hour POI, right? So let's mark it as our H1 POI, and then we're going to work on our buy limit right at the 50%. Or for others, if you prefer and you don't mind the risk reward, you're going to work it on the top. Again, like I said, this is my personal preference, all right? So let's see if the trade comes in to trigger us into the money. So there we get triggered, and then the price begins to move up. Very choppy. We haven't seen. Oh, there we go. So price has moved up in our direction, and we're in the money. Obviously, if you look closely, actually I hadn't noticed this, but let me just show you something very, very interesting. So as you can see, our low was actually here, right? And price wicks ever so slightly. This was a low, right? And we would have had our stops below the low. Now if your stop was too tight, you've been taken out of the trade even though you're right, because there's obviously liquidity resting below that point. So you just need a bit of a liberal stop loss for you to be able to maximize from the trade. So obviously now we got our trigger and price is moving in our direction. This is a 1 to 6. Let's see if price hits our take profit, right? Now one thing I want you to notice is this. Yes, we're in the money with this trade, but let's just move this thing to the side a little bit, right? Can you see that already we've seen another bullish break of structure? And there's a chance that obviously we're going to see a pullback before we see price launching further. So if we're the guys who are going to wait for a double confirmation, let's just go to the higher time frame to see if we've got another POI. So this would be sort of our POI, which we'd be looking at over there. Now let me just change its color so that it's easier to identify. Right, so this would be the POI that we'd be looking at, and if you like, you'd be able to also pick the low if you prefer that, so that you are not taken out of the trade. Again, you come in, you put your 50% of that trade over there, which is more or less the zone that we were trading from earlier on. And then we're going to watch if the market is going to give us a trigger, right? And there it happens. So the market just gave us our trigger, right? So if you look over here now, if we were to go back to the 15-minute chart, you can see that, so let me just do that, right, and then this over here, right, so you can see that for the guy who was taking the confirmation trade, they entered here, and the price would have come back to the entry and then pushed higher. For the guy who was taking the double confirmation trade, this is it, because this then becomes their second high low, and then price pushes right to TP, and both of them enjoy some profits, right? But there's another thing that I would like to draw to your attention, which is saying when, because these things are fractal, when price comes back into this order block. Now let's look only at the guy who's taking confirmed entries, right? So what you have done is, if I can just refresh your memory, let's go to the H1, right, and clear out this chart for a moment. So as you can see, we get our change of character, price comes in, pushes up, gives us another break of structure, and then we are waiting for this sort of zone to be respected before price pushes up. So within this H1 POI, you can also then choose to go to another lower time frame and get another confirmation, right? You can choose to do that, to go into the lower time frame when price comes into this POI and wait for another confirmation. So what are you looking for? What you're looking for is for price to show you within the lower time frames that it's going to change its character and move bullish, right? So let's go say to a 5-minute, right, like so. So we're going to wait for the candles to just play them out. Let me slow that down a little bit, right? And then we're going to wait, right? So what do we see immediately? Let's go to another time frame, right? So over here, let me just play it backwards so that you sort of see what I want you guys to see, right? So what we have, with price moving into this zone, printing these lower lows and lower highs over there, right? So the first sort of signal that you get is this one where price breaks this high, gives you a push up for a possible change of character. But as you would appreciate, the impulse was to the downside, and the candles that are moving up are much more. So it's not really showing you that the momentum is stepped in for the buy. For me, this would not be a good change of character for me to go in long. So it's not a good signal for me. I'd be looking for something else right from the low, and I would be waiting for a sign that the market is very intentional in pushing up, right? Right, now something like that for me is more interesting. So what do we have? We've got this point over here, we've got this lower high, price breaks this low to give us this second low. But what you then see is when price pushes up, this 1, 2, 3 candle move was annihilated by this 1, 2 candle move, right? So it's a sign that perhaps we have the buyers stepping into the market and forcing a change of character, all right? And I would imagine this would be even clearer on a 1 minute time frame. Let's do that. Let's just go to a 1 minute time frame like that. So this is even clearer on a 1 minute time frame. So this high over here has been annihilated by the momentum that came in over there, and then we're simply going to wait for the market to give us an opportunity to go long. All right, so obviously for me over here, I don't want to go too low onto the 1 minute time frame because a lot is happening, there's a lot of noise. But my POI, the last buy candle before the sell comes in, is over here, and we can also identify that we've got imbalance that's over there, right? So what are we going to do? We're going to put in our imbalance over there to show that we're waiting for it to be filled right into our POI, and then we're going to delete that. Then let's come in, let's draw our 50% item over there. For a moment, I'm going to remove this line so that it doesn't confuse us, like so. Okay, so we now have a zone from which to trade from within the higher time frame POI. If you would like to place 50%, then that's fine. For me, I don't mind when it's lower time frame to be taking the full position or the full POI because it's still relatively small, and obviously we've got a higher time frame place where we're going to look at where we anticipate. So let's just go back to the 1 hour and check where we might want to see price coming to. So we obviously want to see price coming over there, and then we go to our 3 minute and we wait for the price to come back into our POI, satisfy the imbalance, and hopefully go in our direction, right? So there, let's be patient, and we're in the trade. See, oh, there we go. So let's just go back to the 1 hour chart and see if price then hit our take profit. Almost instantly we see the momentum coming in. Let's see if our TP is it. Our TP is annihilated. So this is a 1 to 9 trade. Simple. So what's happened is we've seen the change of character, we've seen a confirmation over here, second high that's been printed, and we wait for price to come back into this POI. We go to a lower time frame again, wait for a confirmation, and then price moves in our direction. So that's what we're looking for when we are sort of looking at these POIs and trying to identify entries. So I'm sure I covered every type of entry over here, and you can then pick and choose and backtest and find what works for you and what doesn't, and you'll start to learn what to look for with your own eyes as you sort of backtest, because especially with the confirmation entries, they're very, very hard for you to just catch on by watching someone else do it. It's something you have to practice for yourself and learn to execute by yourself, and then you'll get the nuances of identifying and silencing all the noise that takes place on these other time frames. So I hope that's been a clear enough video on entries, and I think going on now we're going to be discussing the fact that the markets are fractal. So what do I mean when I say the markets are fractal? Let's just put that down. The markets are fractal, right? And what I simply mean is this: you'll find that the setups that I've been showing you, where you expect price to come into a POI, right, and you've got price sort of breaking structure and coming back like this and pushing higher. These things, they happen on any time frame, right? They happen on any time frame. So you could see this happening on a weekly time frame just as much as you could see it happening on a minute time frame. All right, so what you need to do is, like I showed you in this previous example, you must be willing and able to understand that you can go on the 3 minute and find a change of character. You can go on the 1 hour, find a change of character. You can go on the 4 hour, find a change of character. In these examples that we did for entries, I think the first one that I used, we looked at a 4 hour change of character in a daily order block. And then we also looked at a 1 hour change of character Now we also looked at a change of character on a 3-minute chart, and so on and so forth. So what you need to understand in your mind is all these things are taking place on every time frame. It's just how structure is. And if you understand that, the sooner you understand that, the easier it will be for you to trade on a time frame that you're comfortable trading. Because it doesn't mean that because I'm happy to trade the H4 time frame, that is the magical time frame. If you like to use your 1 hour as your main time frame and take entries from the M1, it's up to you, and it's a profitable way to trade. I've seen traders who trade that way and they're profitable. I've seen traders who like the H4 time frame with their confirmations coming from the M15 or M5. It's a profitable way to trade. I've seen traders who prefer to trade the weekly charts and they're waiting for their confirmations to appear on the H4, and they're taking that H4 move for their weekly hold. Others prefer to trade the daily. They're taking their entries on the 2 hour, 1 hour. As you can see, what I'm simply trying to demonstrate is there's a lot that's happening on the market from different time frames. But once you understand what to look for from a structural perspective and where price is going to turn, and you have a good idea of what to look for price to validate that it's turning, then you're going to find that it's going to be easier for you to find the best time frames for you to trade for. All right. So for me personally, what I do is, right, let's say this is our H4 time frame. This is just my preference, and maybe you may want to use it as your sort of first way of trading if you have never traded before. If you have traded before and you prefer the time frames, it's also beneficial for you to stick to those time frames. But for me, what I do is when I see price moving up like this, I get a nice bullish break of structure like that. What I simply do is I mark my H4 point of interest first, right? Let's say this is the H4 time frame, and then these are the 2 points of interest that I can find, right? And then when I see that price is showing me the signs that it wants to move downwards, I come in with my tool that shows my premium and discount pricing. I identify the zones where I'm likely to see price turning on the H4, right? So these are my H4 points of interest, right? Then what I then do is I move to a lower time frame, which is for me preferably the 1 hour. I'm still identifying POIs, right? So obviously on the 1 hour chart, maybe we had the internal structure forming this way, and let's just put that in blue, right? And let's just move this to the side a little bit. Now as you can see, now all of a sudden this H4 point is appearing on the H1, but there's an H1 point that's not appearing on the H4, and it's this one, right? This is my H1 point of interest, and then I mark that in, right? So all of a sudden I've got 2 H4 points and 1 H1 point of interest where I can sort of look into, and then I use a combination of my H1 and H4 POIs to identify zones where price might be turning. Right. So when I do that, I then look at my other confluences and start to look at the liquidity story. I start to look at the imbalance story, right, to see which ones are going to be more likely responsible for the trend change. And then once I realize and eliminate the ones that are likely to not to be honored or respected, then I stick with the ones that are likely to be respected. So what I then do is when I see price moving in, normally with my H1 order blocks, if I'm looking for a confirmation, I'm going to go down, say, to the 5-minute and below to look for a confirmation. If I don't get that confirmation, I'm not in the trade. Sometimes, depending on the instrument, I'm happy when I see an H1 OB, especially because it might be a small POI. I'm happy to take a risk entry, just to work on my limit order like that, because I don't want a nightmare with anybody. And then from that H1, I take my trade. Right? If I lose the H1 trade, when price approaches the H4 trade, I wait for confirmations. In my H4 zones, I prefer confirmations. They're big enough to show me confirmations, and even if they're very, very liquid, they'll always show you in the lower time frame that structure is changing. So that's when I look for those confirmations. If I don't get a confirmation within the first H4, I'm moving to the next one to wait for confirmation. So especially if I'm trading currencies, I don't normally refine that H4 zone. If I'm trading currencies, I normally don't refine that H4 zone. I leave it as it is and wait for price to come into that zone and give me a confirmation. All right. If I'm trading instruments like oil and trading instruments like the Nasdaq on the 1 hour charts, those ones I prefer to take risk entries, and I will refine these H4 to become H1. Okay, I will refine, look for the lowest point, refine, and then I take the trade from an H1 POI. All right, then it means I'm just going to be setting my penny orders, no confirmations. I look for my imbalance and liquidity story. I'm in the trade. All right, so I hope this has been very, very helpful, and you guys managed to learn a lot from this session. We've been talking about entries, and I hope this helps you on a journey to profitability. In our next video now, we're going to be combining everything together and just walking through some chart examples of how you can apply these principles and start making money for yourself in currencies, and sort of acquaint you to the reality that it's not all trades that are going to hit your TP. It's not all trades that are going to go in your direction, and sort of give you the real without most of these cherry-picked situations. You're going to see how my strategy sort of performs on a day-to-day basis and sort of come back down to earth if you were too high, or if you had low expectations, then you can start to see how the strategy plays out to give you an edge in the market and make you profitable. All right, so I'm happy that we've reached this point. Otherwise, cheers and see you in the next video.